Daily news and analysis. We keep you informed and inspired.
This is World Today.
China urges the United States to properly manage differences. Saudi Arabia and the United States signed an agreement to cooperate in the peaceful usage of nuclear energy. And a Chinese animated film inspired by the legend of the 8 Immortals is heading overseas. Hello and welcome to World Today. I'm Do Hongyu in Beijing. To listen to this episode again or to catch up on previous episodes, you can download our podcast by searching World Today. Our first story. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has urged the United States to properly manage differences between the two countries during a meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Manila. Wang also called on the U.S. to respect China's core interests, uphold the One China principle, and address China's legitimate concerns. Wang said the two heads of state set the course for a constructive relationship of strategic stability during their meetings in Beijing in May. He said the task of both sides now is to stay on the track laid out by the two heads of state to turn their consensus into understanding and concrete action across government and sectors. Both sides agreed to give play to the role of political and diplomatic channels, make good preparations for the next stage of China-U.S. high-level exchanges, and advance substantive progress in building a constructive China-U.S. relationship of strategic stability. For more, we're joined by Wen Jing, Research Fellow with the Center for International Security and Strategy at Tsinghua University. So thank you very much for joining us. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said this year marks a pivotal moment for China-U.S. relations following the summit between the two heads of state in Beijing. So in your view, why is this a critical juncture for the bilateral relationship, and what opportunities does it present for improving ties?
Okay, thanks for having me. I think the Beijing summit between Chinese and the U.S. presidents marks a very important turning point for China and the U.S. relations, just as Foreign Minister Wang Yi recently highlighted in his talk with Secretary Rubio. For my understanding, I think these following points. Firstly, I think this is a very important turning point after years between China and the U.S. persistent bilateral friction. As we all know, actually, China and the U.S. has long-standing tensions over Taiwan, Thai curbs, and also strategic mistrust over these years. So I think this summit jointly defined a very clear direction, that is building constructive relationship of strategic stability. I think this for the first time in years, both sides agreed to reject zero-sum rivalry and set shared guidelines between these two countries. So this is very important. And secondly, I think this pivotal moment brings opportunities to reset ties. Like for both sides agreed in Manila that diplomatic trust still is very important to establish between the two countries. So we have to prepare upcoming ministerial and also work level exchanges, preventing dangerous strategic miscalculation. So this is the first point. And secondly, I think wider space also opens for a win-win practical cooperation. Progress can be made on trade and also climate governance, and also like food security and people exchanges, like these aspects. So all in all, I think this makes a very important turning point for China and the U.S. relationship.
In your first point, you mentioned building a constructive relationship of strategic stability. Could you explain to us what does this strategic stability mean in the current context of China-U.S. relations?
For my understanding, the strategic stability actually is these two leaders between China and the U.S., President Xi and also President Donald Trump. They set a tone for the current China-U.S. relations. That is, we have to have positive stability centered on cooperation. Before, maybe China-U.S. adapted to a zero-sum confrontation from U.S. perspective, but now both sides agree that we have to achieve a win-win collaboration in trade and in agriculture and other many aspects. This is the first point. This is positive stability. And the second thing I think is healthy stability with regulated competition. We know the competition still exists between China and the US, but we have to reject decoupling and also tech blockades and also confrontation. I mean, we have to we still have competition, but it's in a healthy stability status.
Then do you think a constructive relationship of strategic stability can really serve the interests of both peoples and also meet the expectations of the international community?
Absolutely. As we all know, China-US relationship is the most important bilateral relationship in the world now. And I think this China and the US, we have a constructive strategic relationship that is very essential to the world. It delivers tangible benefits to not only to Chinese but also to American people. Like economically, stable ties can ease tariff barriers, stabilize industry supply chains, and also boost the trade in many goods. And also, I think it restores smooth like student and also scholar exchanges. As I work in Tsinghua now, I can see that after this summit, there's many bilateral communication between China and the US. So this sets a very positive tone for China and the US people-to-people exchange. And the second, I think it also expresses a very positive signal to the international community that is today's world still faces many challenges like the conflict in Middle East and also the climate changes. So for the other world's two largest economies, I think China and the US provides very many vital global public goods. So if China and the US can have a very positive relationship, the international community welcome this kind of relationship because that is very good to international community.
The Chinese foreign minister has urged the United States to respect China's core interests and uphold the One China principle and also properly manage differences. Why are these issues considered the foundation of a stable China-US relationship?
According to our former experience and also the communication between China and the US is always disrespect China's core interests because our interest in Taiwan and our own developing petals, right? So I think this time Wang Yi just put up this main principle that is US have to respect China's core interest, uphold the One China principle, and also US have to properly manage differences, right? Because China and the US have many differences. So this is actually Wang Yi set from the indispensable foundation for the stable China and US ties. This is very important. I think also the One China principle also stands that it's a political bedrock of China-US diplomatic relations. It's also very important to China-US relations. In short, I think respect for core interests at the bottom line. The One China principle serves as the political cornerstone, and the South dispute management also provides a very functional guarantee. So that's my take on this question.
Okay. And then the Chinese foreign minister also called on the two countries to translate President Xi and President Trump's consensus into concrete actions across government departments and other sectors. So what progress should we expect to see in the near future?
Firstly, maybe we can see there's very rapid progress in people-to-people exchange. As I was working in university in the past several months, I can feel that the bilateral scholar exchange and also student exchange between China and the US has progressed. And also, I think the China-US, we will have a bilateral economic and also trade cooperation into a very normal status. Like we can see the newly launched China-US Trade Council and also the Investment Council finalize the operation rules in the coming months. So I think the two sides will push forward this like tariff reductions, covering protests, and also resolve long-standing barriers like agricultural market access. So like these kind of aspects. So I think firstly the people-to-people exchange, and the secondly I think is bilateral economic and trade cooperation. There's these two aspects which I can see rapid progress in the near future.
But at the same time, the two countries continue to face disagreements on various issues, including trade and technology and regional security. What do you see as the biggest obstacles to translating high-level consensus into concrete cooperation?
For my understanding, there are several deep-rooted strategic divergence between China and the U.S. I think this problem still remain unresolved. Washington still regard China as its primary long-term competitor, and also he still stick to a containment strategy, right? Including cheap export curbs and also industry protection. So this is a very deep-rooted structural strategic divergence between our two sides. U.S. domestic, political fragmentation also blocks consistent policy delivery. You see, U.S. still facing many problems domestically, so that will have some influence, or we see in its foreign policy making.
The meeting between Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio took place on the sidelines of an ASEAN gathering where regional security was a major focus. Then how does a stable China-U.S. relationship affect peace, development, and security across the Asia-Pacific?
I think China and the U.S. relationship is very important to Asian Pacific peace, development, and security, because I think the Asia Pacific has sensitive flashpoints, including the Taiwan Strait and also South China Sea, right? So China-U.S. communication is a guardrails to Asia Pacific security. And also for regional development, I think this region is the engine of global economic growth. So stable China-U.S. ties safeguard regional supply chains and also free trade and also cross-border investment. So this our joint cooperation in economy and also in digital economy brings shared prosperity, not only for China and the U.S., but also for ASEAN and also for all Asia-Pacific economies. So I think this is included two aspects. One is regional peace, and the other is regional development.
Thank you very much. That was Wen Jing, Research Fellow with the Center for International Security and Strategy at Tsinghua University. You're listening to World Today. Stay tuned.
Hello, I am Dr. Digby James Wren, a political analyst and international relations scholar specializing in China area studies. World Today offers unmatched in-depth perspectives on China's politics, economics, business, technology, and society. World Today's team of reporters and contributors provides valuable information from all of the world's major economies. I hope you can join me on World Today for the very best insights and news from China, on China, and help to build a better understanding of China's role in the world today.
Welcome back. Saudi Arabia and the United States have signed an agreement to cooperate in the peaceful usage of nuclear energy. The Saudi Ministry of Energy says the deal follows an announcement made last year by Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman during his visit to the U.S. The deal would allow the kingdom to enrich uranium using U.S. technology and reprocess nuclear waste, yet it excludes the IAEA additional protocol, which authorizes intrusive snap inspections. A civil nuclear deal between the two countries has been in the works for years, but progress has been hampered partly by non-proliferation groups, who warn that it could offer Saudi Arabia a path to develop nuclear weapons. The U.S. Energy Department says the deal will be reviewed by Congress and will go into force if there are no objections within 90 session days. Now for more, we're joined by Dr. Zhang Chuchu, Deputy Director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at Fudan University. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Zhang.
Thank you for having me.
This U.S.-Saudi nuclear deal is unprecedented because it allows Saudi Arabia to conduct domestic uranium enrichment, which the U.S. has never approved for any other country. So why do you think the U.S. has made this historic policy breakthrough for Saudi Arabia?
Well, indeed, like you said, the United States has changed its policy dramatically. And my observation is that the shift reflects converging priorities under the current administration. We can see that there might be commercial and industrial benefits for the United States because Saudi Arabia's nuclear plans, which could be part of its Vision 2030, could offer a large and long-term market. And in the context of the ongoing United States and Iranian confrontation, including prior strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, I think that Washington also wants to deepen partnership with Saudi Arabia. And also, I think Riyadh has made it very clear that this is its intention. So if Washington refused to support its nuclear ambitions, then it would turn to the other powers for this intention. So by stepping in, I think Washington also aims to anchor Saudi Arabia into its security and economic orbit. And last but not least, against the backdrop of the tense relations between the United States and Iran, the United States is also trying to use the nuclear issue to create a rift and deeper tension between Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Now, compared with the 2009 US-UAE nuclear deal that strictly bans domestic fuel production, the Saudi deal allows potential local uranium enrichment. How will this looser framework reshape future US nuclear cooperation with its Middle Eastern allies?
Well, indeed, in 2009, the United States and United Arab Emirates, agreement set the gold standard. And at that time, the United States made it very clear that it requires Abu Dhabi to renounce domestic enrichment and reprocessing. So right now, allowing potential local enrichment in Saudi Arabia actually breaks that precedent. So I think this sets a precedent that future partners can cite. That means strict fuel cycle bans are negotiable when commercial stakes and strategic alignment are high. And also the consequence could be that it weakens the normative force of the so-called gold standard and may also encourage the other Gulf or regional states to demand similar flexibility. And over time, this could also normalize the so-called managed domestic enrichment under bilateral oversight for trusted partners. So in that case, the role of IAEA can also be undermined. And I think in the end, this could also lead to more intense competition between states in the Middle East in general.
And then the United States has launched military strikes on Iran over concerns about its nuclear program to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. But it is now granting Saudi Arabia uranium enrichment capabilities. So how do you interpret the contradicting nuclear non-proliferation policies?
Right. Actually, I would say a fundamental difference is that the United States relations with these countries are very different because it always perceives Iran as an anti-American force in the Middle East, whereas Saudi Arabia is treated as a strategic partner pursuing a civilian program under a negotiated bilateral framework with the United States technology and preferred commercial terms. So that is why in this context, you see critics who argue that this dual standard undermines global non-proliferation norms by signaling that enrichment rights depend on political alignment rather than strict adherence to international rules. So in general, I think what is happening at this moment also shows that for some state actors in the international society, non-proliferation could, in the end, become a tool of statecraft. When commercial and alliance interests are strong enough, then the norm is applied more flexibly.
The U.S. Department of Energy said that along with the cooperation deal, a bilateral safeguards agreement was also signed. But despite this safeguards agreement, what inherent risks of nuclear proliferation does this deal bring to the already unstable Middle East region?
Well, right. That is a very important point. Actually, the bilateral safeguards agreement provides for additional verification measures, and that focused on the most sensitive activities. Despite so, I think key residual risks remain because, for instance, enrichment technology and know-how once introduced could create a latent breakout capability, given that centrifuges can be reconfigured or knowledge applied to higher enrichment. And also, you know that a state with low enriched uranium capabilities can theoretically reconfigure centrifuges to produce higher enriched uranium far faster than starting from scratch. Also, opacity around exact verification modalities and any side letters reduces transparency. And last but not least, also in a region already marked by Iranian nuclear advances, regional power wrestling, and mutual distrust, I would say any expansion of enrichment infrastructure could also raise the baseline threat perception and the temptation for parallel programs.
Saudi Crown Prince once said that Saudi Arabia would develop nuclear weapons if Iran does. So how will the U.S.-Saudi nuclear cooperation affect the Iran-Saudi nuclear rivalry? And could it trigger a nuclear arms race in the region?
Well, I think that scenario is possible. While providing a pathway to enrichment does not automatically trigger a weapons program, but it strengthens Saudi latent capability and bargaining position. And also, in the current context, this could also give Tehran a ready narrative that the United States applies double standards. So Tehran will likely interpret American assistance to Saudi enrichment as a direct strategic threat, giving Iranian hardliners the so-called justification to push their own enrichment levels higher. And that could actually make it even more difficult to break the current deadlock in the negotiations between the United States and Iran. And also, I think it's not just about Iran or Saudi Arabia, but it could also raise the probability that other regional actors such as Turkey, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, etc., could also revisit their own fuel cycle ambitions or seek parallel or similar arrangements.
And finally, the agreement still requires congressional review in the United States. And some lawmakers have raised concerns about the risks of nuclear proliferation. So what issues are likely to dominate the debate in Washington? And could Congress alter or delay the deal?
Well, there could be some debates, but I don't think in the end it could alter the deal because under Section 123 of the United States Atomic Energy Act, the deal sits before Congress for a 90-session-day review period. So right now, I think lawmakers might focus on the waiver by passing the additional protocol the president set for Middle East proliferation, and also they might talk about security guarantees for its other allies such as Israel. But I don't think the Congress can alter or block it because blocking a 123 agreement requires the Congress to pass a joint resolution of disapproval. And if the president insists on that, if he vetoes that resolution, then the Congress needs a 2/3 supermajority in both the House and Senate to override the veto, which is a high legislative bar that makes outright cancellation very difficult unless bipartisan consensus forms against that deal, and that is not very likely.
Thank you very much. That was Dr. Zhang Chuchu, Deputy Director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies and Fudan University. More to come. This year's International Advanced Air Mobility Expo is underway in Shanghai. You're listening to World Today. We'll be back after a short break.
Hello, My name is Alessandro Golombieski Teixeira. I'm a professor of public policy and management at Tsinghua University in Beijing. I am a great listener of The World Today. In my opinion, The World Today is one of the best China radio programs. In The World Today, we can get the best news and analysis in what is happening now in the world. So please come to join us.
You're listening to World Today with me, Do Hongyu, in Beijing. General aviation aircraft and drone makers from around the world are gathering in Shanghai to showcase their latest technologies and products as the global low-altitude economy continues to expand. Over 400 exhibitors are taking part in this year's International Advanced Air Mobility Expo, up over 30% from its inaugural event last year. The expo covers the industry's entire supply chain, from aircraft manufacturing and drone development to advanced materials and supporting technologies. The low-altitude economy, which generally refers to economic activities taking place in airspace below 1,000 meters, is undergoing rapid transformation. Last year, China's low-altitude economy reached 1.5 trillion yuan, or over $200 billion. Now for more, Lian Qingxuan spoke with Yao Shujie, Chiang Kong Professor of Economics at Chongqing University.
The 2026 International Advanced Air Mobility Expo is now underway in Shanghai. Why did China decide to hold this expo now? And how would you assess the current development stage of this industry in China?
The Chinese economy has entered a stage of improving from the low quality to high quality development. And Chinese economy on demand is slowing down due to the structural transformation. And the transformation is moving from the traditional agricultural, manufacturing services to the so-called emerging industry and emerging technology. The low-altitude economy is the new emerging economy. Services and manufacturing and also infrastructure development is a highly comprehensive emerging industry and services for China. And it involves a lot of new innovation, new productivity, and also new services area. This expo in Shanghai is a demonstration of China's concerted effort from the central to the local government of how to cultivate the low-altitude economy for now and also for the future as part of the integrated effort to develop the so-called new productive forces supporting China's modernization and development in the future.
The low-altitude economy involves a long industrial chain. So which upstream and downstream industries do you expect to benefit the most?
The so-called low-altitude economy actually include comprehensive industrial chain from the upstream and the downstream. The upstream, we're talking about the manufacturing of the flying equipment, for example, like the helicopter, the aerodrome, and also the eVTOL. This modern equipment is an emerging manufacturing industry. It's brand new for the last few years or less than a decade. And it will emerge into a bigger and bigger industry. Some of the manufacturing firms are already listed in the stock exchange. The other thing is the infrastructure. The infrastructure like sort of mini airport or mini flying platform for these kinds of flying machines. And also electricity charges, electricity development, also battery, also the green energy services, air navigation like the Beidou. This is the second infrastructure development. And the downstream is about the services. The services that's supporting the logistics of the low-altitude flying machine and also the distribution of goods and services from the starting point to the end point up to the customer's level. And finally is the integration, the services which are needed to support the kinds of industry and services and the infrastructure which I just mentioned. So there is an integrated circuits in the process, from equipment manufacturing, infrastructure, logistic, to the regulation and the platforms. This is going to affect every cities in China, and we already have some very successful example from Guangzhou to Shenzhen, the regular flying services, and the Jingdong services delivery of goods and parcels from one place to another. And there will be more and more services and production to be open. For example, like tourism, sport seeing, and distribution of goods to the remote area and the mountain areas, and also services for agriculture. For example, like plant protection. You can use the aerodrome to broadcast fertilizers and also insecticides. This used to be done by relatively low-level machinery and also human being. And in the future, we don't need even any kinds of human being at all. We just use the platform and also the logistic platform, which I just mentioned.
Yes, and as you've mentioned before, emerging technologies such as AI, autonomous flight, beidou navigation, and new energy are merging fast with the low-altitude industries. So how is this combination reshaping industry development, as demonstrated by many exhibits at this Shanghai Expo?
The low-altitude economy is not isolated. It actually is built upon on the fast development of China's extensive infrastructure development and also technology, particularly the Internet of Things, air navigation, and also the AI technology automation. These are already built, and the new energy, battery, of course. These are already built on the existing production system within the economy, particularly the concept area which I just mentioned. Now, the AI is another issue. It can be embedded into many production activity and many production systems. The low-altitude economy certainly would require a lot of this newly developed AI technology, particularly, the concept calculation, logistic development, and also distribution of goods and services, and the concept of safety control in the air, especially this low altitude is going to be very low, something like 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters, up to 1,000 meters for most of the flying equipment. And this would require a lot of very precise artificial intelligence calculation, the so-called digital economy driven by the AI. In order to not only to increase the efficiency, the safety, but also to reduce the cost and also promote the technological development. This Shanghai Expos of the low altitude is actually to regularly gather the concept of new development technology and also to exchange what other people are doing in the platform in one provinces with another province and also the rest of the world. We have some very advanced manufacturing and low-altitude developers in the world joining the Shanghai Expos. And also the nearly about 600 organizations or enterprises within China, they provide lots of new equipment and also idea and models into the system. So I expect that the development of the low-altitude economy, including the component which I just mentioned, is going to accelerate it very quickly in the next 3 to 5 years. And it will be emerging to become a very major new economy pillar in the Chinese economy system. Because the Chinese economy on demand, we are actively looking for new investment and new area to support the high quality development in the country.
As the low-altitude economy develops, what are the key challenges facing this industry and what need to be done to achieve large-scale commercial adoption?
The biggest challenge is, of course, is the evolving technology because we don't know what will be the technology which will become very mature. Lots of new technology are under development and also there are lots of scope for further advancement to reduce the cost and also to improve the system efficiency. The second is the infrastructure development, how the infrastructure is going to be integrated with the existing infrastructure, for example, like motorway, high-speed rail, and also the so-called distribution of goods and services at the moment, how these are going to be integrated and making the low altitude economy to be part of the more macro system so that the scope of economy could be exploited and the cost could be reduced to a minimum. And certainly is the regulation and safety between regions, because the coordination between different localities, between different areas is very important. So the country need to produce a very transparent regulatory and institutional framework to guide the healthy development of the low altitude system. And again, including the regulation, they are also immature. They are still under discussion. Lots of policy are just very premature. And as the technology, the system getting more and more developed and advanced, then these kinds of regulation have to be changed regularly and quickly to meet the new situation. Now, the concept exposed activity in Shanghai is just one of the arena the country could produce a new system. But there's lots of things to be coordinated at the central and the local level and between the local authority and the enterprises which are involved in the development of the low altitude economy system.
That was Yao Shujie, Cheung Kong Professor of Economics at Chongqing University. This is World Today. We'll be back.
Welcome. I'm Elaf Elad, economics professor and member of the Data Science and AI Center at New York University, Shanghai. On the World Today program, you can find in-depth and impartial insight, as well as critical commentary on key trends in the Chinese economy, financial technology, business, and blockchain. To prepare for the world tomorrow, join me on World Today.
Welcome back. A Chinese animated film inspired by the legend of the Eight Immortals is set for an international release this summer. All Wishes Come True opens in Australia, New Zealand, and Papua New Guinea on August 13th, followed by releases in North America, the UK, Ireland, and the Netherlands a day later. The film debuted on the Chinese mainland on Saturday and has already earned about 370 million yuan, or over $50 million, helping drive this year's summer box office past 4 billion yuan, or nearly $600 million. For more on this, Xu Yawen spoke with Tang Jiman, professor of Chinese cinema, CET program at Capital Normal University.
Professor Tang, All Wishes Come True is inspired by the legendary story of the Eight Immortals, one of the most iconic tales in Chinese culture. But instead of portraying them as larger-than-life figures, the film tells the story of them as ordinary people before they became legends. In your view, what makes this reinterpretation meaningful for today's audiences?
The reinterpretation is profoundly meaningful for me. I think one of the major reasons is, let's use this bigger word, it's called the democratizes greatness. By that I mean, it strip away the kind of a celestial glow and showing the Eight Immortals as flawed, struggling everyday people. I mean, the people we see on the street, the people we meet in our classroom. And so in this sense, the film delivers a vital message for our anxious, hyper-competitive age, meaning that legends are not born, they are forged through ordinary choices. I think this film is so particular in terms of saying that the very opposite is to modern culture, which is obsessed with intimate genius, the prodigy, the natural, the chosen one. And so the immortals actually were not chosen ones because they were special. They became special because they persist through the sufferings. If we look at the stories of these Eight Immortals, every single one character, be it the iron worker, a beggar, or maybe a scholar, their divinity didn't come from a magical spell, but from how they responded to failure, betrayal, and loss. And so for audiences exhausted by the pressure to be exceptional from day one, this is liberating. It says your current struggle isn't a sign you don't belong. It's a raw material of who you are becoming. And so this is, I think, one of the main reasons.
if we look into the theme behind the film, it's backed by Pearl Studio, the animation company behind films such as Kung Fu Panda 3 and Over the Moon, and together with the CMC Pictures, which has been involved in the production and distribution of major Chinese film franchises. So how do the film's high production standards combined with Chinese cultural elements help it connect with the audiences around the world?
Well, once again, I think the film's ability to connect with global audiences rests on this very tripartite formula. First thing first, world-class craftsmanship as the vessel, the means, the tools. Secondly, authentic Chinese aesthetics as the soul. And thirdly, universally human emotion as the very bridge. And so together they transform a distinctly Chinese legend into a story that feels both exotic and intimately relatable to anyone, anywhere. So first thing I would say, it is the very high production standards, which is supposed to be the global entry ticket for a film to succeed. The backing, for example, by Pearl Studio and CMC Picture isn't just a credential. It is a promise of quality that international audiences have learned to trust. If you look at CMC Pictures' credential, this is a film company that actually has been built a distribution network spanning over 100 countries, 500 cities since 2016, which successfully launched titles like The Wandering Earth and Ne Zha internationally. This logistical muscle ensures the film doesn't just get made, it gets seen by audiences across the country and across the world, because it's tailored to marketing strategies for different regional markets. And so the technological excellence, as well as this very high production standards, plus the distinctive theme, the visual poetry from tradition, the character design, and storytelling, which all actually help us to reimagine this very mythology for modern taste.
Professor, let's look at the economic side of the story. We know the 2026 summer movie season has already generated more than 4 billion yuan, that's about $570 million in box office revenue. Against this strong market backdrop, All Wishes Come True has also generated impressive box office results shortly after its release, surpassing nearly $50 million US. So what does this performance tell us about Chinese audiences' growing interest in traditional cultural elements and their willingness to pay for high-quality domestic animation?
Yeah, the box office performance of All Wishes Come True exceeding, for example, like 47 million US just within 4 days of its release, which is quite remarkable. It achieved a rare kind of a counter-trend growth. And earning an outstanding 9.7, almost 10 score on a major ticketing platform like Maoyan. It tells this powerful story that goes beyond mere financial success. It signals a profound shift in Chinese audience behavior, revealing this very maturing cultural market where heritage and quality are now a key drive of consumptions in the market. I think one thing that I need to highlight at this point is that it is now actually the success is happening against a backdrop of a booming summer movie season. And this season, in fact, for example, provides the largest audiences. For example, the student population, younger, the middle class with disposable income. I mean, these are the major backbones of this very season, and especially driving the box office success. Secondly, I think that by counter-trend, the film box office continued to rise even after its opening weekend. It's a very rare counter-trend, or what we call the nidiya growth. This is a strong signal, a powerful word of mouth, as initial viewers actively recommend it to others, showing that they perceive it as a product worth paying for. This, once again, tells so much about the previous film, Dear You, Remember 给阿嬷的情书. That one was also quite a success in terms of box office revenue because of this word of mouth effect. That very spreading the word of the goodness of this film, in fact, would contribute to this huge success and eventually suggest its robust and growing public interest in cultural product, especially culture product rooted in Chinese tradition.
Lastly, Professor Teng, so recent successes such as Ne Zha 2 have brought Chinese animation greater international attention. And this new movie, All Wishes Come True, will debut around the world. So what changes have you observed in China's animation industry in terms of storytelling, technology, and global outreach?
Well, I think the Chinese animation industry is undergoing a very profound transformation, moving from an era of outsourcing to one of these confident global cultural contribution. This shift is driven by three key developments that work in concert. I think first thing first, it is a sophisticated reinvention of traditional storytelling, and then a monumental leap in production technology and a strategic evolution in global outreach. These three things actually contribute to these phenomenal success of films such as Ne Zha 2 and including All Wishes Come True. This is a clear testament to this very maturation, demonstrating a growing ability to balance authentic cultural identity with universal appeal. And reinterpretation of the hero's journey in All Wishes Come True and in Ne Zha 2 all actually speak volume in terms of transforming its protagonist from a static folk hero into a complex, rebellious figure wrestling with the themes of identity, destiny, and the friction between individual will and societal expectations. And so my answer to this is that the Chinese animation is becoming increasingly international appeal because of the strong kind of a connection that they try to build through filmmaking production standard, outreaching, and very, in a sense, internationally, universally storytelling techniques. And lastly, I think it is the global and universal value that they try to, in a sense, profess through these very traditional Chinese film.
That was Teng Jimeng, professor of Chinese cinema CET program at Capital Normal University. This is World Today. Stay with us. Paramount Skydance has won European Union antitrust approval for its $110 billion acquisition of Warner Bros. Discovery after agreeing to end the film distribution joint venture with Universal Pictures in Europe. The European Commission said the company will dissolve the partnership within 13 months of completing the merger. It also agreed not to enter into any new film distribution deals with Universal in Europe for the next 10 years. However, a U.S. court has ordered Paramount Skydance to pause the merger while it considers a legal challenge from a coalition of states, despite the transaction having already received approval from the U.S. Department of Justice. Now, for more, we're joined by Harvey Zodin, former vice president of ABC TV Network and senior fellow of the Center for China and Globalization. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Zodin.
My pleasure.
First of all, why does Paramount Skydance want to buy Warner Bros. Discovery? What is behind this deal?
Well, it's a combination of things. I would say that their basic argument is that Hollywood's becoming a scale business, and relatively smaller players like it may not survive against the Amazons, the Apples, the Disneys, and Netflix. And their argument is that the entertainment industry has shifted from a world of profitable cable channels and movie theaters to a world dominated by streaming subscriptions, massive content libraries, global distribution, and technology platforms. And so the company would also get additional assets, including HBO and Max, CNN, TNT, a much larger film and TV library. Paramount's arguing that combining the companies are going to create a stronger competitor with more content, lower costs, and better bargaining power. They project billions in savings through technology integration and corporate efficiencies and other synergies. So to me, there's no question that these arguments are true to some degree. But in my view, there's mergers, mega mergers, mega mergers, and mega mergers. And this is at the heart of the proposed merger. To me, as a former ABC vice president, this deal is even more about politics than economics. It's all about winning control of the hearts and minds of American voters. Paramount already controls CBS, which was a big thorn in President Trump's side. Now they want control of CNN. Paramount is owned by the Ellison family, major Trump backers and amongst his most well-heeled supporters. If they can get CNN through this merger, they've gotten a pathway to the hearts and minds of American voters, hook, line, and sinker.
The European Union only approved the deal after Paramount agreed to end its film distribution partnership with Universal in Europe. Why was that such an important condition?
Well, to me, it's just a small bone thrown by the EU Commission to try to justify that it's acting in the best interest of consumers in Europe. I don't think it was really that important at all. Of course, there are valid concerns about media concentration and distribution, but those are small potatoes compared to real competition questions. Even putting politics aside, there's massive questions about consolidations in U.S. entertainment industry. So just look at the names of these entities themselves. They're already mergers within mergers within mergers. So we're talking about consolidation in U.S. entertainment industry. There used to be 3 major studios in Hollywood. There now will be less. And so prices are going to go up, more mediocre content, less choice for consumers. That's why we have antitrust laws that today are being totally ignored.
Then turning to the United States, the Writers' Guild of America opposes the merger over threats to writers' livelihoods and the U.S. entertainment industry's health. Are they overreacting, and what could this mean for people working behind the scenes as well as for audiences?
No, they're not overacting or overreacting at all. This is their bread and butter. This is their life. And so it means that also when you combine this with the threat of AI, there's going to be a hell of a lot of less jobs for these very talented people. So that's number one. But from the consumer side, there's going to be less choice, less good products, and more dictation by these few industries that are left to tell consumers what they want, whether they want it or not.
Then if the merger goes through, what do you think will be the biggest beneficiaries?
I think the biggest beneficiary will be President Trump and the Republican Party, because I believe that having control of NBC already and now salivating to get control of CNN, they're going to literally be able to control what American voters get to see and hear. And that's a big ball game in America, trying to control hearts and minds.
Thank you very much. That was Harvey Zodin, former vice president of ABC TV Network and senior fellow of the Center for China and Globalization. That's all the time for this edition of World Today. Making news today, China has urged the United States to properly manage differences. And Saudi Arabia and the United States have signed an agreement to cooperate in the peaceful usage of nuclear energy. And this year's International Advanced Air Mobility Expo is underway in Shanghai. To listen to this episode again or to catch up on previous episodes, you can download our podcast by searching for World Today. I'm Do Hongyu in Beijing. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.